Hey, everybody, welcome to today's Daily Distinction. Glad you are here. How was your weekend? Man, I want to tell you, what a crazy weekend. What a great weekend I had. And I've got it. I'm still blown away. Last night on the Ken and Glenn show with a guy named Scott, we had the voice of the Dallas Cowboys, Brad Sham. I am not a Cowboys fan. I've never been a Cowboys fan. If anything else, to me, to me, they were never they were never my favorite team. Bruce, you are so right. What's a weekend? It's all the same. What is today? It's today, Wednesday, Monday, whatever. But good grief. And Charles, you were on there yesterday. You got to listen to our conversation with Brad Sham. I was just blown away. I just thought he was so fascinating, so insightful. He almost made this Indianapolis Colts fan a Cowboys lover. Almost. But gosh, he was absolutely terrific. Hey, Scott, good to see you. Yes, I saw that you were on the show last night. I really appreciate that. So it was, I was thrilled. I was just blown away. And I mentioned too, Tammy and I are binge watching 24. And Glenn Morshower, who's one of the co-hosts of the show of Ken and Glenn, and a guy named Scott. Glenn is Agent Aaron Pierce on 24. And so Tammy and I were watching it last night before we went to bed. And it's this scene where Glenn, as the Secret Service agent, falls out of the car and with, I love television, with a pistol, he takes out a guy with an automatic weapon just like that. And another guy's coming up with a flamethrower and he shoots and he hits the flamethrower perfectly so it explodes. So the magic of television, right? But it's so fun watching Glenn on these old episodes of 24 and then sitting and talking to him all the time. It's really great. Hey, my pal Ron Carr is in the house. Great to see you, Ron. And yes, I'm sure that the voice of the Dallas Cowboys would not really be thrilling for a Giants fan to listen to, but I think you really enjoy him. He was just absolutely terrific. I have not explored yet. He was talking about something that a course that he is going through, and interestingly enough, it's a spiritual course. And it's based in Judaism, which Brad's Jewish, but he also, it's non-denominational. I want to learn more about that as well. It's very spiritual. It's very, a very interesting thing. He was so, Charles, he was terrific. He was so open about what he's going through. Thank you, Talene. That wasn't great. I mean, it was funny when everything was over. Ken and Glenn and I are kind of debriefing, and it's like, the program was so good. It's like it scares us for the future. It was really, really terrific. So thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. Instead of the Cowboys, the Cry Boys, Phil. So are you doing that too, Scott? You're binge watching 24. What a great, the only problem with 24 is, and Tammy and I were talking about this, the only other show, let me tell you what it does so great. And then I'll tell you the only other show. It's like, all right, we're going to watch this and we're going to turn it off, go to bed. And then the cliffhanger at the end of each episode is like, okay, one more. And so you watch one more, right? And they're so great at keeping you hanging on for the next show. And the only other one that we have agreed is that good at the end of an episode that you kind of go, oh, I got to watch one more. I got to see, is Ozark. If you binged Ozark on Netflix. My goodness, that show is so good about keeping you tuned in. Hey, Jeff, Las Vegas Raiders, baby. You bet. They're coming. One of the things Brad said last night was that he doesn't think we're going to see NFL games in front of fans until 2021. Not the 2021 season, but they'll start coming back in early in 21 and, through the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl will be just as normal, but they'll be kind of like NASCAR was this weekend, running against to an audience. Yeah. So, I haven't seen that one, Ron. I've heard great things about Fauda. So maybe that's our next binge. I've really heard great things about that. So got to check that out. Hey, Charles, we did that as well. We binge watched Blue Bloods, which is so good. Darcy, man, I'm telling you, I already have. We've got everything's lined up thanks to my great pal Scott Stratton. We are wired for tickets here in Vegas when the Colts come to town. We are going to be at the Colts Raiders game, and I can't wait. So it's going to be. I have heard so many things, like when you go to a game in Oakland, if you're wearing the apparel of the other team, that you're kind of like taking your life in your own hands. And I wonder what it's going to. We talked about that a little bit last night on the show. I wonder what it's going to be like to wear Colts apparel into a Raiders game. If I better not say that, because Stratton will probably pull the tickets if I talk about it. No, wait a minute, I forgot. Stratton said that was the requirement to get the tickets, is I had to be brave enough to wear my Colts uniform, my Colts jersey to the game. So we'll see. Delene, was the ending of Shocker? Was that amazing? If you, I'm not going to spoil it for those that haven't seen it, but if you haven't seen the end of Ozark, crazy. Hey, Teresa, how you doing? Please say hey to Owen as well. Hope everything is great with you and things are good today. And Charles, yep, the Niners still collecting the money. You bet. Those seat licensing fees are crazy, aren't they? So, well, thanks everybody. So glad that you're here. Please take a second and share if you would. I say this every day, but that's really how we're growing our viewership. It's absolutely amazing to me. We are averaging a little over 1,000 viewers a day here, and some days we've hit 2,000 a couple of times. And the reason for that jump is simply because more people share. And so, if you are kind enough to share this, then that helps us grow. So if you like the program, if you appreciate it, if you'd share it, that truly means the world. So today I want to talk about. I've been talking with so many friends, and I got to admit to you, I'm experiencing myself is a little bit of the blahs. Anybody else feeling that way? You feel a little bit of just. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist. I am not a licensed therapist or anything like that. We're just talking about what we're going through, and by no means is this. Supposed to be in replacement for talking to somebody that's trained and schooled in this. But are you getting the blahs just a little bit? Or do you find yourself on this roller coaster? I know I am, especially since how I make my livelihood has been totally shut down, just gone. So what do you do to fight that? And it's not, I'm certainly not talking about a situation like a clinical depression. I'm talking more about the roller coaster, about, we feel good. Then all of a sudden something happens and we just kind of feel blah. I had that happen today. I got started today and working on something, and it just seemed like I was on a treadmill, and couldn't get off. And I kind of got the blahs. And then we got this call, and we're going to work things out. Earlier this year, one of the speeches I gave before the pandemic hit was for, it's called NAMM, the National Association of Music Merchants. So it is for the folks who have music stores, everything from the huge stores like Guitar Center and Sam Goody and those, to mom and pop music stores like we, had in Jackson County, Indiana. But obviously because of that, there's also incredible musicians there. I saw my buddy Dax Nielsen, that's the drummer for Cheap Trick. He and I got to hang out a little bit there. And Garth Brooks was there. The greatest bass player perhaps of all time, next to Dana Williams, my buddy. The greatest bass player of all time, Lee Sklar, was backstage, and we talked a little bit when I was there. I mean, it's all these great musicians, because it also represents the stores where they buy their instruments or get their instruments, or as kids, they learned to play the instrument, all of those kinds of things. So I spoke for him in January. It was one of the coolest speeches I've ever had a chance to do. And so they have a program coming up in Nashville that they've had to cancel because of all this. So they went to the membership and said, hey, we want to do a virtual event. Who do you want to hear again? Is there anybody? And they said overwhelmingly they wanted to hear more from me. Well, okay, so now I'm back way up here. So we're going to do a virtual program for them coming up, and I'm so excited about that because, that's the other business that's been hammered by this is folks, they're musicians. So, it's like down and then back up. and it's tough. Ron is a former president of the National Speakers Association. And he says, big time, lockdown alone for 2 months. Yeah, exactly. And Ron, we're so used to being around people. We're so used to engaging. We're so used to doing that. Dwayne, there you go. So, and yeah, Charles, sometimes it does. It just kind of seems like we're going through the motions. So I wanted to make a list of some of the things that we could do to fight that. Because as we are, you've seen it online, and we've talked about it here before. We may not be all in the same boat. We're certainly all in the same storm. And as we battle this storm, what are some of the things that we can do and not do? And I just thought it might be kind of fun and interesting to talk about some of the things that we shouldn't do when you have the blahs. So I looked up several different sources, and it was interesting to see how many of them agreed. Right? They were in agreement on some of the things that we should not do when we have the blahs. And please throw a comment up here, contribute. Let me know what you don't think that we should do when we have the blahs. And this was the one that every source I found agreed on. Everybody said, don't watch the news. Now, it's fascinating to me that one of the first things that every site I went on, and when I was doing the research to prepare for this, that everybody said is stop watching the news. Wow. I don't want to be uninformed, but I don't want the method of information to contribute to the problem. Does that make sense? I want to be informed, but I don't want to be the method of how I get informed to contribute to enhancing the problem that we're experiencing. And so this thing about don't watch the news was really prevalent. So that's just, if you're feeling the blahs, it's something to stay away from. Next, hanging with negative people. Now, we're in a situation here where we may not be able to hang out with our friends because of the social distancing, or maybe our friends are someplace else, or whatever it might be. But I'm going to suggest to you that's just as important with who you hang out with online and who you talk to on FaceTime or Zoom or however you communicate. Brad Sham made an interesting point last night. And if you're just joining us on our Sunday night show with Ken Walls and Glenn Morshower, our guest was Brad Sham, who is the voice of the Dallas Cowboys. And Brad was telling us off there that he was just going through some friends thing, and he saw this video that was posted. And it was a guy saying, if you tell me to put on a mask, I'll punch you in the mouth, and we got to do this and we got to do that. And Brad said, it wasn't that I disagreed with his position as much as it was I was offended by his negativity in such a sensitive time. And he said, I never do this, but I posted on that thing, on Facebook. This is arrogant and abusive. And I just thought that was really good. I thought that was really powerful. You can have a position that agrees with mine, but it can be arrogant and abusive in terms of how it's expressed. So what I'm suggesting to you is we got to be careful. Not only, it doesn't do us a whole lot of good to not watch the news and then go to social media and hang out with negative people who are telling us the same thing or worse than we were hearing on the news. Does that make sense? So we have to listen to that. We have to control that. We have to focus on that. Third thing it says is don't beat yourself up. Try to talk yourself out of it. In other words, don't beat yourself up because you've got the blahs. Recognize it, understand it. And then, interestingly enough, most experts agreed you don't try to talk your way out of it. We'll talk about what you do to get out of it, but talking your way out of it is not going to be the way to approach it. So that's not going to be the way that we get out of it. But we do recognize that we're there, right? And the next one, Charles, you saw. I mean, that's one of the things is don't get drunk. Don't get drunk. Don't get high. Don't do that. That is not going to get you out of the blahs. It's just going to make you feel worse when you sober up, right? So alcohol or weed or whatever is not the response to this. Now, this next one. Have you ever heard the old joke about the minister that's talking and the guy's going, amen, amen. The minister keeps talking, the guy's going, amen, amen. And the minister keeps talking and the guy goes, you stopped preaching and gone to meddling. So in other words, when it's something that you don't do, amen, right? When it's something that you do, you've crossed the line there. So this is a hard one to be across. Don't buy stuff online. You know, I'm going to hate to see my Amazon bill over these last few months. All those things I have to have. Yeah, we've spent a little bit online. Here's the other one. Don't overthink it. If you're down, you're down. Don't try to overthink it. Now we're going to talk about what do you do to get out of it? What do you do to get out of it? Oh, Shelley says we shouldn't cook or bake. That's yes, that should be on the list. So what should we do? Bruce wins the prize. I recommend listening to what Bruce is talking about is I have a podcast. And by the way, Bruce, we just got the audio done for the intro and everything for season 3. So I'll be talking about that a little later on this week. We're going to be starting season 3 of Project Distinct. And but season 1 and 2 is available. And gosh, a little bit of shameless self-promotion I'll put here at the bottom because we've taken those, the audio from seasons 1 and 2, and we've put that on Distinction Radio. So all you got to do is go to Distinction Radio, and you can hear that as well. Okay, so what are they? Yeah, Jeff says the news is biased, political, and untrue in many situations. Charles talking about what we should do, and he called some elderly friends, had great conversations. Yes, delighted to hear from you. I'm certain that's the case. So what do we do? What do we do when you have the blahs? And number 1, walk, move, get outside. I don't agree with everything that Tony Robbins says. I really don't, but I admire his incredible ability as a speaker. And I admire some of the things that he said. And one of the things I truly do admire is when he says, motion creates emotion. Have you ever noticed that when you're feeling down, you got the blahs, you're feeling blue, that what we want to do is sit on the couch and snack and not move. We want to become static. So one of the most important things that we can do when we got the blahs is get up and move. Get up and do something. Get on a bike. Or, walk around the block or something, because that motion will help create a more positive emotion. You probably read about when we do some kind of movement. I'm not talking about being a bodybuilder. Obviously, I don't have the qualifications to talk about that. But when we move, dopamine is created and released in our bodies. It is the body's form of drugs, and it gets you feeling better. So just get out there, just move around, and being outside. If I noticed, Charles, you said it was raining in the Bay Area today. Sunny day, beautiful day, and not very hot today in Vegas. So it's a perfect day to get outside, which I'm going to do here in just a little bit. It's part of what we can do to start feeling better. Next, music. I pump in some uplifting, toe-tapping music. It will raise your mood. It will make you feel better. Steve Martin had this great bit on that nobody can be sad when you're listening to a banjo. By the way, that's combining music with laughter. And if you're not familiar with that bit, look it up on YouTube. Sad and banjo don't go together. And he's got this hilarious bit about no matter how depressed you are, you listen to a banjo, it makes you feel better. And it's part of what we need to understand is that music can make us feel better. Laughter obviously makes us feel better. We were talking about shows that we've been binging. Tammy and I have also been binging a television sitcom called The Goldbergs. I had never seen a single episode of The Goldbergs before. Now I've seen every one of them. It's a hilarious show. It's an incredibly funny show about growing up in the 80s or being young in the 80s and parents, and it's just so well written and so well done, and you will see so many things in that show that remind you of how your childhood or young adulthood was. So laugh, find things to laugh at. When was the last time you watched the movie Airplane? If you haven't seen it in the last 90 days, maybe you ought to watch it again, and don't call me Shirley. Find something funny. Watch something that makes you laugh. And then, and this was the one that was universally on everything, is that if you have the blahs and you're feeling down, that's the time to do something for somebody else. Charles mentioned that he had made some calls on elderly friends and had great conversations. You make someone else feel better. Guess what happens? You feel better too. Isn't that one of the most fascinating aspects of human psychology? The way that I can feel better is to make someone else feel better, and then that is reflected back on me. In the book I've got that's coming out in August, The Ultimate Customer Experience, I talk about what I call the mirror effect. In other words, how you treat other people is often exactly what's reflected back at you. The story isn't in the book because it's not mine, but it's worth telling. Earl Nightingale used to tell the story about their neighbors in Scottsdale, Arizona. And these neighbors move in this beautiful house in the same cul-de-sac as Earl and Diana Nightingale were living. And they're there just for a relatively short period of time. And Earl meets the husband, but the wife is just, she doesn't get out. She doesn't, and so, as a matter of fact, Diana even later told me, I was asking about the story, and Diana even said, they wondered, was she an invalid? Was there, what was her health problem? What was going on? Because the wife never circulated. And so fast forward about 6 months, and they see a moving van in, and they're packing to move out of the house that they just moved in 6 months ago. So Earl Nightingale goes over, strikes up a conversation with the husband, and just said, what happened? Hopefully nothing is wrong. And he said, my wife hates it here. The ladies of the community haven't reached out to her and involved her. And back home where we came from in the Midwest, she was very involved and very active in the community. And now no one here has reached out to her. And so she just doesn't like the community and doesn't want to continue to live here. And the fascinating thing was, no one in the community reached out to her because she stayed in the house and didn't reach out to anybody else. So, in other words, what she saw was simply a reflection of what she was sending out. But yet, because she didn't understand the mirror effect, that what's reflected back to us is an extension of what we put out there, that she misinterpreted what people were thinking about her and feeling about her. It's one of the things we have to understand, is that it's another old story, but it's told the story of the old timer sitting on the bench, and this one couple pulls up in a car and says, "Hey, old timer, what are the people here like?" And the old timer says, "Well, what are they like where you came from?" And he said, "Well, they're bitter, angry, awful people." And he said, "Well, that's about what you're going to find around here." And that couple pulls away. And about 15 minutes later, another car pulls up, and the people roll down the window and say, "Hey, old timer, what are the people like around here?" He says, "What are the people like around where you came from?" They're really positive, fun people to be with. He said, "That's exactly what the people are like around here." In other words, what we have, what we see, what is in front of us is often a reflection of what we're putting out there. And that's one of the reasons it's important to fight the blahs when we have them. Because if that's what we're putting out, then that's what gets reflected, and it becomes this vicious cycle, this spiral that gets worse and is hard to break out of. So that's why it's important to do what we need to do when we have the blahs. Charles, you are exactly right. Animal House and Blazing Saddles are hilarious. And When Harry Met Sally is a great New Year's. That is a great movie just about any time that you would want to watch it. Find ways to have some fun. So what are we talking about today? We talked about things you shouldn't do when you've got the blahs. Things like, watching the news, hanging with negative people, beating ourselves up because we're feeling bad, maybe drinking too much, buying too much online, more importantly, overthinking it. Hey, it's just the blahs. We can beat this. I'm not talking about clinical long-term depression. That's not what we're talking about here. We're just talking about that feeling of the blahs that we're getting because of all of this that we are enduring together. So what do we do to get out of it? Move, get out, walk outside, move. Hey, one thing I forgot to mention, I thought this was interesting. On several things it said, eat nuts. Almonds and other nuts are high in omega-3, which will make us feel better. Vitamin D will make us feel better. But the main thing is walk, laugh, listen to uplifting music. Most importantly, do something for somebody else. Because when we do something for somebody else, our life continues to grow and enhance and get better, even when we're locked in. Hey, before I wrap up, I just want to make sure I say happy birthday. Joe Bonsall, that was with us last week. Today is Joe's birthday. So if you're online and you're an Oak Ridge Boys fan, or if you're on Facebook watching this, as many of you are, just search for Oak Ridge Boys and say a happy birthday to Joe Bonsall on his 72nd. Can you believe how vibrant and great and everything he is, and 72 and singing, and man, just killing it. So a big happy birthday to Joe Bonsall today. And thanks for being with us, Joe, last week. It was a terrific experience. So until tomorrow, about the same time, we're going to try to get some sunshine. Absolutely right, Charlie. Phil, oh my gosh, Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep. Oh my gosh, what a funny and insightful movie. I'm really glad I caught that before I got out of here, because that's one of my faves too, my friend. That is such a great one. Hey, Jerry Vaughn, my great friend, says we've been phoning people who live alone to encourage them. Jerry, what a great thing that you and your wife are doing. And the texts that we've been doing here are of great encouragement, reconnecting from an earlier time. Jerry and I were state FFA officers together, and have been friends ever since. But as life changes, goes on, you kind of drift apart. And Jerry has made the effort has been reaching out, and we've been texting, and that's just been fantastic. So, hey, everybody, thank you so much for watching today. I truly appreciate it. Now, the important thing is go do something. Fight those blahs. Do something. Make it happen. I'll see you tomorrow right here at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, for another episode of Daily Distinction.